Alexander hated water. Not because he disliked swimming or bathing. On the contrary, he was neat and absurdly disciplined. It was just that water always showed up in his life at the worst possible moments. His ex-girlfriend's tears, the rain on the day they broke up, and now the damned pipe that chose to burst on a Sunday morning when Alexander's only plan was to be alone with his coffee and the silence. He stood in the kitchen, watching as a stream of cold water shot out from under the sink, spread across the floor, and formed a puddle that had already swallowed his favorite newspaper. "Perfect," he muttered. "Just perfect." The phone shook in his hand. Alexander dialed the plumbing service and, gritting his teeth, gave them his address. The dispatcher's voice reassured him. "Our technician is already on the way. Please wait." In Alexander's head, an image formed. A guy in his 50s with a beer belly and a stern look. That was how his inner world worked. Simple, straightforward, no surprises. He didn't like surprises. But when the doorbell rang 20 minutes later and he opened the door, he froze. She was standing there, young in a work jumpsuit that looked like it had been tailored for a fashion show rather than dirty plumbing work. Her dark hair was tied in a high ponytail. Her face was fresh, determined with a hint of a smile. Her eyes, the kind of eyes that could make anyone believe in anything. Even that a female plumber showing up at 7 on a Sunday morning was the most normal thing in the world. "You called for a plumber?" she asked calmly, adjusting her gloves. Alexander forgot how to speak. His tongue refused to cooperate. His whole body stiffened as if he'd just been hit by a jolt of electricity. Yeah. Pipe," he finally managed, pointing toward the kitchen, hoping that was explanation enough. "All right, let's take a look," she said as if she'd been working there all her life. She walked past him, leaving behind the faint scent of mint and machine oil. Alexander watched her go, feeling a dangerous spark begin to stir in his hardened soul, the one that had long considered women the enemy. "My name's Sophia," she tossed over her shoulder as she knelt by the sink. "And yours?" "Alexander?" "Well, Alexander, looks like you've got yourself a real party here," Sophia commented with a grin as the cold spray hit her face. She didn't even flinch. He watched her work. Confident movements, no panic. Every tool fit her hand like she'd been born with a wrench. This was nothing like the picture Alexander had in his head of the so-called weaker sex. "Don't get carried away," he warned himself. "She's just a plumber." "A plumber, Alexander? Do you hear me? You're not supposed to dive back into that mess of feelings. You've had enough. That's it. Don't even think about it." But his heart, as always, was brutally honest. It had already picked up its pace. "By the way," Sophia said suddenly, "did you know this pipe isn't just leaking? Someone's done a DIY repair here." "Me," Alexander admitted quietly, feeling his cheeks heat up with betrayal. She looked up at him, and in her eyes wasn't mockery, but something deeper, a flicker of curiosity. "You, Sophia," didn't even try to hide her surprise. "You really tried to fix this pipe yourself?" Alexander shrugged as if it was the most logical thing in the world. "The internet says it was easy. The internet also says you can cure a cold with turmeric and whale songs." She shot back, bending over the pipe again. For the first time in years, Alexander laughed. Really laughed. Sudden and genuine. And the sound of it startled him. There was something freeing in that laugh. And therefore dangerous. Suddenly, the water burst out even harder. Cold spray hit them both. Alexander jumped back, but Sophia held her ground, gripping the wrench like she was battling some sneaky dragon. Droplets shimmered on her cheek, making her look ridiculous and beautiful at the same time. "Damn it," she exhaled, shutting the valve. "This isn't just a leak. The pressure in your system's crazy. Unless we replace half your pipes, you'll have your own personal water park." "I told you," Alexander muttered. "I hate water." Sophia lifted her head and looked at him the way a doctor looks at a stubborn patient refusing to take their meds. "Hating water? That's like hating air. But hating women is fine." Almost slipped out, but he bit his tongue just in time. Instead, he said, "I've got my reasons." She didn't answer, just dove back into work. Alexander stood off to the side, fists clenched. His past, dark and sharp like shards of glass, suddenly cut through his mind again. He saw his ex crying, throwing him the apartment keys, screaming, "You don't feel anything, Alexander. You never understood me and you still don't." That was when he made himself a promise. Never again. No women, no feelings, only peace, silence, and control. And now some 25-year-old in a work jumpsuit was cracking his armor without even trying. "Got any towels?" Sophia's voice pulled him out of the spiral. "Huh. Yeah. He grabbed the first one he could find and handed it to her. She wiped her hands and suddenly her phone blasted a ringtone. Something way too cheerful for a serious plumber. Sophia glanced at the screen and rolled her eyes. "Dad again thinks I should be sitting in an office writing reports. And you," Alexander hesitated, decided to break stereotypes instead. "Yep." She grinned. "In high school, I wanted to be a Formula One mechanic, but for now, Chicago's pipes are my personal grand CRE." Something inside Alexander cracked. Her openness, her lightness, even her irony. It was shaking loose the principles he'd welded shut around his heart. "You're strange," he said, not even knowing why. "Is that a compliment?" "Haven't decided yet." Their eyes locked, and right then the pipe burst again, as if nature wanted to remind them this wasn't a rom-com. This was reality. Sophia laughed. An honest, ringing laugh that threw Alexander completely off balance. "So, are you going to help or just stand there like a museum guard?" she teased. And for the first time in years, he dropped to his knees beside a woman. Not with a lover, not with an enemy, but with a partner in the fight against chaos. The water had been thrashing everywhere, as if it had a mind of its own and wanted to humiliate Alexander once and for all. He held the pipe steady while Sophia tightened the bolts. Their hands brushed against each other more than once, and every time it felt like a jolt of electricity seared through him. "Hold it tighter," she ordered. "And stop blinking like you're about to faint." "I'm not blinking," he protested. "You are. I'm counting." He clenched his jaw. This girl is a disaster. And yet his gaze slid against his will to her neck, to the damp strands of hair that had slipped free from her ponytail. He hated himself for noticing. Then suddenly the pipe gave way and the water stilled. Sophia tossed the wrench aside with a sigh. Done. They both dropped onto the floor, exhausted, but alive. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was thick, charged. Alexander realized he wanted it to last. Wanted to just keep looking at her. "You did pretty well for an internet repair guy," she teased, wiping her forehead. "And you handled chaos pretty well for a..." He hesitated. "For a what?" "For someone who could be writing reports in an office," he finished. Came out softer than he'd meant. Her smile faded. "So, you think I'm wasting my time too?" "No." Alexander's voice shot up too sharply. I'm not used to seeing a woman in this role." "Right?" Sophia said curtly, turning away. "You're used to seeing women in other roles." She said it casually, but it hit him square in the chest. Alexander felt his past rise like a black wave from the depths. He wanted to explain, but the words stuck in his throat. Sophia stood, gathering her tools. Calmly, she added, "I still need to finish up in the basement. There's a main line down there." "The basement?" He shivered. "That place is awful. They're pipes, Alexander. They don't choose where they go." He followed her down the narrow stairs, feeling that this descent was symbolic. The deeper they went, the more his fears were being laid bare. The basement greeted them with a stench of mildew and heavy darkness. The light bulb flickered like something out of a cheap horror movie. Sophia switched on her phone's flashlight and crouched by the main line. "This is worse than I thought," she sighed. "Looks like you're in for a serious expense." "Money is not the problem," Alexander muttered. "The problem is..." He stopped. "What?" "Trust," slipped out before he could stop it. She looked up, and in the dim light their eyes met. "You're a strange one, Alexander. First you talk about pipes, then about trust. Because it's connected. Pipes, people, everything breaks under pressure," he explained. Sophia laughed, but her laugh was warm, not mocking. "You know, you'd make a pretty good plumber philosopher." Her voice echoed in the basement, and Alexander suddenly realized he wanted this girl to stay in his life longer than the duration of a repair job. And that was the scariest realization of all. The main line hissed, almost as if to confirm Alexander's words about pressure. Sophia leaned in, loosening the metal fitting, and suddenly a spray of water hit her square in the face. "Oh, perfect!" she exclaimed, bursting into laughter. "I've now officially taken a shower in your basement." Alexander, who normally avoided any kind of physical joke, couldn't hold back. "At this rate, I'm going to start charging you for utilities." She looked at him through the wet strands of hair clinging to her face, then laughed even louder, and that laughter blew open doors inside him he'd kept locked for decades. "You're unreal," he blurted. Sophia froze. Her hands were still holding the wrench, but her eyes had shifted. Softer now, intent. "Is that bad or good?" "I don't know," Alexander admitted. "Probably dangerous." Her smile turned faint, almost serious. "Danger makes life interesting, doesn't it?" That line hit him like a stone dropped into a deep well. He realized he could no longer look away. Silence hung between them, and even the basement seemed to be listening. To break the tension, Sophia suddenly straightened and said, "Okay, enough philosophy. I'm not done yet. Are you going to help me, or just stand there like the head sponsor of this repair?" "I'll help," he nodded. They worked side by side. Their hands touched again and again on the same tools. Each contact brief but electric. Alexander could feel his wall of indifference crumbling. Suddenly, something crashed. The old valve tore loose from its mount. Sophia staggered and nearly fell. Alexander instinctively caught her. She ended up in his arms, warm, wet, fearless. For a moment, everything froze. Water ran somewhere to the side. The light bulb flickered. But for them, only this existed. The closeness that took his breath away. "You can let go now," she whispered. But he didn't hurry. Their faces were too close. His heart pounded so loudly he feared she might hear it. "You smell like mint," he said foolishly. "It's gum," she replied, and they both laughed. The laughter broke the tension, but somehow made the moment even more dangerous. He let her go, though he didn't want to. "You're incredible," he muttered. "And you?" "Too serious," she smiled. "Although when you laugh, you seem more human." Those words hit harder than any argument. He wanted to protest, but instead quietly said, "I haven't laughed like that in a long time." She looked at him again with her dark eyes. "Then maybe it's time to start." The silence that followed those words was thick, like honey, and Alexander realized this was no longer just a chance encounter. This was an intrusion into his closed-off world, and there was no turning back. Sophia leaned over the pipe and resumed her work, but there was a new lightness in her movements. Alexander stood nearby, feeling something invisible and powerful pulling them toward each other like a magnet. And he knew if he let this feeling ignite, there would be no going back. When the final bolt finally clicked into place, the system hissed and then went silent. The water no longer gushed. The basement was filled with quiet. Sophia exhaled, set the wrench aside and rubbed her hands. "Well, congratulations. Your house is officially saved." "And my life too," he blurted. She raised an eyebrow. Bold words. "I'm not joking," he added. "Seriously. Without you, I'd have drowned. Not just in water." Her smile faltered. For the first time all day, she looked unsure. "You are trying to hit on me right now." "I'm trying to be honest," he said. Sophia looked at him as if she could see right through him. "Alexander," she whispered, "you look like a man who's kept the doors locked for far too long." He drew in a breath and you opened them. "You know," she murmured, "I actually came here to fix the pipes, not someone's heart." "Well then," he smiled, "you'll just have to add a new item to your price list. Heart repairs." She laughed, giving him a playful nudge on the shoulder, and started up the stairs toward the kitchen. Alexander followed, feeling that maybe for the first time change was knocking at his life. "Well," Sophia said, adjusting her overalls, "I guess I'll have to send you the bill now." "How much?" he asked with a grin. "For the work, one price. For the heart, another." "I'm willing to pay both," he replied, his tone suddenly serious. She laughed again, but this time her laughter was softer, warmer. as if something invisible and personal had sparked between them. Alexander felt his heartbeat quicken. He didn't want the moment to end, and with a touch of nervous courage, he finally spoke. "How about coffee tonight?" he asked with a careful smile. "I know a cozy little cafe that makes the most incredible coffee." As soon as the words left his lips, his chest tightened with anticipation. Had he sounded too forward? Would she think he was rushing things? Sophia held his gaze for a long beat, deliberately stretching the silence. Then her lips curved into a sly smile. "So, are you actually asking me out on a date?" she teased, her eyes glinting with mischief. "Maybe," he whispered. "Why not?" she exhaled with a smile. "After today's little shower, I could definitely use some company, especially with a cute guy." She leaned in and brushed her lips against his cheek. A kiss so quick and gentle that goosebumps rippled across his skin. His heart slammed against his ribs. Sophia pulled back, her fingers grazing his arm as she stepped away, then confidently moved toward the door. At the doorway, she glanced back over her shoulder, her voice low but certain. "Alexander, I can't promise it'll be easy, but I can promise it won't be boring." He nodded, smiling through his nerves. "After that flood, I'm not afraid anymore." And when the door closed behind her, the scent of mint lingered in the hallway, along with the undeniable feeling of something new beginning. Alexander stood there knowing his life had already started to change and he had no desire to stop.